Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all my Cardfight Vanguard budget Granblue deck profile for post My Glorious Justice. It's been a while since I've done any of the budget deck profiles, but I figured I'd get around to it again since we have a lot of good support in the latest booster set, My Glorious Justice, for Granblue and Dimension Police, but it does, get a little pricey at times when you're trying to complete the deck, so I thought I'd focus on a more budget-friendly version of the Granblue deck, all for under $10, I believe. Currently, for what the prices are for all the cards, should be under $10. And also, as another added bonus, I decided to stick solely to the cards that came out from the My Glorious Justice booster set, just to make it a little easier for those of you going in for the most recent set and looking to build the deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for starters, for your grade 3s, I run 4 Master Swordsman Nightstorm. Now, aside from the SP1, because it was the only one I have, it's a very budget-friendly card, just with a very good setup on Vanguard or Rear when placed. Put the top 2 cards from your deck into the drop zone, and this unit gets plus 5,000 until end of turn. And on Vanguard or Rear, when it attacks a Vanguard, if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, you can counterblast 1 and draw a card. So having the Imaginary Gift Protect effect as well definitely does help for this card, being able to give you that additional card in your hand, or if you go for Imaginary Gift Protect 2, being able to give you the additional shield power somewhere on your field. But like I said, going for the more budget card and having a great card for setup, whether it be on your Vanguard or Rear, is a definite added bonus to the deck. And for backup grade 3s, I run 4 Seabound Demon Beast Scaredic. Now this one is the one I went for since it is we're relying solely on cards from the My Glorious Justice booster pack. If you wanted to run, I believe his name is Ghoul Dragon, he was originally from the first set, Champions of the Asia Circuit. He isn't that expensive either, so if you wanted to replace this card for that one, you could do that just as well. With this one, it's a Vanguard or Rear once per turn. If your drop zone has 30 or more cards, discard all the cards in your hand, and this unit gets plus 30,000 in extra critical until end of turn. Now, the only reason I run the majority of this one compared to our next card is for the fact that it has an Imaginary Gift Protect marker, so it gives you that added bonus if you don't want to invest completely in the actual card itself. Plus, you also have the fact that Nightstorm can go on Rearguard to use its effect. So if you want to ride this on your Vanguard circle and get the Imaginary Gift Protect, then call Nightstorm to Rear. You have that option available to you just for that. But you can also do the reverse as well if you want to get off Scaredic's effect, which definitely needs a good buildup of cards since your drop zone needs 30 or more. So remember that when using this card. And lastly, to wrap up the grade 3s, I also run 2 King Tentacle. When put into your drop zone from your deck, you Soul Blast 1, call this to Rear, and it gets plus 10,000 to end of turn. I run 2 of this card because it is a grade 3 without Imaginary Gift Protect. If you wanted to, you could try dropping down one of the Scaredics to put in a third copy of King Tentacle. But just having that power, especially when you go off of some of your other cards being sent to the drop zone, King Tentacle definitely is a good, easy call to Rear to give you a more powerhouse unit to use against your opponent. And that is it for the grade 3s. We'll now move on to the grade 2s. I run 4 Kicking Frangle. I run this along with its backup counterpart, which we'll get to in just a second. Kicking Frangle, when placed from the drop zone, 2 of your grade 2 rear guards get plus 4,000 until end of turn. So just giving you that additional added power boost for your cards definitely does come in handy. So you have the option for your powered up units with this one when placed, just being able to select this and the other card as well for the additional strength boost that you can do with the deck. And I also run 4 of the card that sets it up, since not a lot does call from the drop with this deck being more of a setup with the drop. But Punching Frangle definitely is a big help, and you basically, with this one, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 2, it's a Rearguard only effect once per turn. You call a card from your drop zone to rear, and if you called Kicking Frangle, you countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. So having Kicking Frangle set up in your drop zone is a definite important part of using your Punching Frangle, since then you'll have the setup needed, and when you obviously use your Punching Frangle to call out your Kicking Frangle, you can use Kicking Frangle to then power up both of the grade 2s on your rear guard. So also just relying on Punching Frangle for the fact that it is your main go-to card in the deck to call out things from your drop zone. So you definitely want to run 4 of this, but like I said, you also want to run 4 of Kicking Frangle along with Punching Frangle, so you have definite added power boost and also just consistency with calling out the proper card from your drop zone to the field. And lastly, to finish off the grade 2s, I run 3 Storm Rider Ghost Ship. I decided to run 3 of this card since, like I said, I'm focusing mainly on the Kicking and Punching Frangle play for the grade 2 lineup. But Storm Rider Ghost Ship from the hand, it cannot be normal called, and it cannot be called to the guard either. But on rear, when it attacks, this unit gets plus 15,000 until end of that battle. At the end of that battle, draw a card and retire this unit. So just giving you another option to have a card to call from Punching Frangle on the field is a big go-to reason why I like to run 3 of this card. But like I said, I only run the 3 since it would limit us on other grade 2 calls we can use, and having my main focus of the budget Granblue deck being Punching and Kicking Frangle for their own consistency with one another. And that is it for the grade 2s. We'll now move on to the grade 1s. I run 4 Dolph the Ghosty. Now the Gus Jin Perfect Guard was from the Champions of the Asia circuit, so we're not running it in this version. Also just for the fact that it is a budget-friendly under $10 deck. So I run 4 of the new Perfect Guard Dolph the Ghosty, which definitely is still a very good Perfect Guard. When placed, you discard a card from your hand, and one of your units cannot be hit until the end of the battle. So it has the Perfect Guard effect, but also when placed on Vanguard Circle, you draw a card and discard a card from your hand, so you get more consistency. And I also really love Dolph the Ghosty in the deck for the fact that it helps to set up your drop zone more as well with the discard effect. So if you do have this card as your ride target, you can have that discard draw to also get through more consistently cards in your hand that you may want for additional setup with other cards on the field. And I also run 4 Skeleton Sharpshooter. When retired from rear, you may put 2 cards from the top of your deck into your drop zone. So you just have that additional setup with this card, especially kind of refrains your opponent from wanting to retire this card from the rear guard, because then they'll just add to you building up your drop zone with a bunch of different cards as well. So it's a good one to rely on for that said reason alone. It's also just another added good backup ride target with your Dolph the Ghosty in case you wanted to go for that ride instead, since we have some other grade 1s which are focusing more on for their rear guard effects and wouldn't make too good of ride targets. Those ones being Troubadour, Cadaver, Alfie, which I run 2 of. When placed from hand, if you have 10 or more cards in your drop zone, discard a card from your hand and countercharge 1, soul charge 1. So just having that drop zone setup definitely does help, but also just for the fact that we use up the counter blasts and the soul blasts pretty well with Punching Frangle calling from the drop zone. You want to have more build-up with this card. You have to call it from the hand, so remember that. So it's one of those cards you do want to open up with the deck, so it's another one to rely on for those plays, but I like to run it at 2 for that reason. I don't really like riding it for the fact that it is a 7k unit, so you're not really going to have too much consistency for hitting a lot of your opponents' Vanguards if you go first, so try and keep that, and also just keep consistently with the other ones, because at least with Dolph the Ghosty being a 7k, you at least have that on Vanguard effect when placed. And lastly, for the grade 1s, I run 2 Pat the Ghosty from the drop zone during the battle your opponent's Vanguard attack. If your drop zone has 10 or more cards, you may call this card from guard. An auto when retire from the guard, you bind this card. So it's a 4k grade 1. Once again, avoid riding this if you can with the deck, but also just having that drop zone effect for the extra protection and then binding it gives you another good setup with some of your other cards on the field, like Master Swordsman, Nightstorm, but I decided just to stick it to the 2 Pat the Ghosty and 2 Troubadour, just for the ease easy setup. If you wanted to run additional Troubadour, you can take out, let's say, some of the grade 3s, maybe dropping down 1 Scaredick and 1 King Tentacle to add in additional Alfies. The only reason for this would be so you can have consistency with your ride targets being the only 12k count. If you want to have more consistent perfect guards in your hand, but it's still a viable ride target, you can go for those cards instead with the deck. And lastly, for the grade 0s, I run 1 Captain Night Kid, just for the starter in the set. Obviously, for the deck, I'd say it also matches up pretty well with your main grade 3 unit being Nightstorm. And for the trigger lineup, since we stuck with just the criticals you can get from the My Glorious booster set, I run 4 Rough Seas Banshee and 4 Night Spirit for the critical lineup being 8. And then also 4 Paolo, which is Pirate Ship Handler for the generic draw trigger, since we're running Dolph for the perfect guard Sentinel. And lastly, 4 Rick the Ghosty, the trigger lineup, always being the easiest of the cards to get for the budget deck, but still very, very consistent when you have that lineup for your criticals. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like I said, I wanted to focus on a budget deck, and if you guys have any requests for any other budget deck profiles, definitely love to look into them. But until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.